Thousands of riders are getting Harley-Davidsons with zero payments. Sounds like a dream? It's not. It's a desperate move from a collapsing empire, and every dealer, rider, and worker is about to feel the shock. Because what's really being handed out is control. The day Harley blinked first. A confidential message circulated through Harley-Davidson dealership systems today, prompting immediate confusion across the industry. Without an official press release or public announcement, an internal alert notified staff that select high-end Harley-Davidson models, some valued above $30,000, were being offered to qualified recipients with no down payment, no credit check, and no standard financing requirements. The response was swift and chaotic. Dealership phone lines across multiple states were overwhelmed. Online rider forums saw a spike in speculation. Local radio stations in cities like Chicago and Dallas fielded calls from stunned listeners trying to verify what they were hearing. Rumors of a hoax or potential cyber attack quickly circulated, but none of it was false. Access credentials for something labeled the Ownership Opportunity Portal were distributed to sales staff across 18 states. The listed motorcycles were not clearance items or outdated stock. These were current full-featured models, premium cruisers, trikes, and long-haul tourers. Bikes that once symbolized years of financial sacrifice were suddenly available under terms that sidestepped every traditional purchasing barrier. Longtime Harley-Davidson riders expressed frustration. One Kansas City owner commented, "I spent years saving up for mine. Now they're handing them out to anyone with an internet connection?" Reactions across social media range from disbelief to outrage, with many questioning whether this was a targeted marketing experiment or a sign of deeper structural instability. The company has yet to release an official statement, but industry analysts suggest the move reflects more than a promotional tactic. It appears to be a significant shift in Harley's retail strategy, one that reveals growing pressure to keep inventory moving by any means necessary. But this wasn't just a public spectacle. Beneath the polished chrome and showroom lighting, a far uglier truth had taken hold. Harley's drastic move to give away motorcycles is just the beginning. We've got more insider details coming your way, so make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. We've done the research, and you don't want to miss what's next. The dealer floor is now a graveyard. Walk into almost any Harley-Davidson dealership in the United States right now and you'll find rows of untouched bikes lining up like a parade no one asked for. Some locations are so overstocked they've moved units into service bays, break rooms, and even rented storage containers behind strip malls. One regional CEO in Arizona described the scene bluntly, "We've got 500 bikes sitting here with nowhere to go. It costs us more to keep the lights on than it would to light them all on fire." The numbers are brutal. Each unsold Harley racks up daily costs. Financing interest, insurance premiums, climate-controlled storage, and physical depreciation. On average, it adds up to nearly $37 per motorcycle per day. For a dealership carrying 500 units, that means nearly $20,000 a week in losses before a single engine even turns over. Multiply that across 170 dealership groups, and you're looking at over $25 million a month bleeding from Harley's retail partners. And the worst part? These aren't entry-level bikes or outdated models. These are flagship builds with optional touring packages, custom fairings, upgraded infotainment systems, and chrome that gleams like a retirement trophy. The kind of machines that used to have waiting lists. But demand has vanished. Young riders aren't interested, older ones already own theirs, and the financing system that once made it all possible is buckling under the weight of higher rates and falling trade-in values. Desperation has begun taking physical form. A dealership in North Carolina recently offered a buy one, get one service plan for the first time in its history. Another in Minnesota posted a window sign reading, "Take the ride, pay later, much later." Even seasoned sales staff have started whispering that they've never seen it this bad. Not in 2008, not in 2001, not even during the 90s bust. We've done the homework. Our favorite motorcycle gear is linked below. Built for real riders, and then Harley made a phone call no one expected. The memo Milwaukee tried to bury. The document leaked through the back door of a logistics firm contracted by Harley's Midwest Distribution Center. The subject line read, "Rapid Placement Strategy, Phase 1 Targets." The email outlined a plan to remove 45,000 motorcycles from active inventory in 60 days. Not sell, not lease, remove. Terms like alternative allocation flow, non-traditional placement, and in-market recipient activation were used in place of what the memo truly meant: giveaways. A direct quote buried in paragraph 5 set off alarms within the dealer network. By bypassing price resistance barriers, we can recalibrate brand visibility and reduce carrying risk. Dealers who received the document were stunned. The implication was undeniable. Harley wasn't just trying to boost numbers, it was preparing for an existential reset. One source close to the board called it a brand firewall. The goal: offload as much inventory as possible before the next quarterly earnings report. That report, insiders say, is projected to show the company's worst cash flow position in over 30 years. But the most chilling sentence came near the end of the memo. Asset reallocation to non-ownership channels must occur before institutional review triggers covenant reevaluation. Translation? If Harley didn't move the bikes fast, banks and investors would be free to pull their funding. Once word got out, chaos rippled across regional managers and franchise owners. In New York, a dealership reportedly filed an injunction to block the program within their state. In Texas, a dealer group cut ties with corporate and issued their own pricing. But most remained frozen, forced to comply with a strategy they knew would undercut their future in order to preserve Harley's now uncertain present. And one line in that email? It made dealers panic. Because behind the logistics jargon and inventory metrics was something far more devastating. Harley was preparing to change not just how it sells bikes, but who it sells them to. And if anyone felt that betrayal more than the dealers, it was the men and women who had worn the badge for decades. The end of the Brotherhood. For decades, owning a Harley meant more than torque and chrome. It meant membership, identity. The patch on your jacket wasn't just for show, it was proof. Proof that you'd earned the ride, paid your dues, made the pilgrimage to Sturgis or Daytona or some forgotten highway in the middle of nowhere just to shake hands with someone who lived the same story. But this week, that story ended. Veteran riders are now watching with open disgust as Harley's newest owners show off their bikes on Instagram and TikTok. No gear, no experience. Just branded giveaways posted with hashtags and smiling influencers. One former club president in Wisconsin said it flatly. It's not the ride anymore, it's the reach. Online forums that once organized rides are now filled with refund requests, patch-burning videos, and members announcing that they're done with Harley for good. Some dealers report that longtime customers are canceling upgrades, refusing service packages, or walking away from trade-ins because they don't want to be associated with the discount brand. What was once sacred, symbolic even, is now just another corporate algorithm play. Riders aren't mad because others got a good deal. They're mad because the meaning was stripped out of something they spent their lives building. Harley thought it was giving away motorcycles, but what it actually gave away was the last trace of exclusivity, tradition, and earned ownership. And when the patches came off, Harley lost more than customers. It lost its soul. But this identity crisis was only the beginning. Inside the plants, the rebellion had already begun. The machines still run, but morale is gone. The engines kept turning, but the people inside were shutting down. At Harley's Kansas City and York manufacturing plants, the sound of assembly lines was still constant. Pistons were still forged, seats were still mounted, but something fundamental had shifted. Production teams were no longer building motorcycles, they were filling inventory orders no one wanted, and the silence in the break rooms was louder than any exhaust. Line supervisors began noticing subtle changes in behavior. Error rates were climbing, sick days were spiking. Veteran welders and technicians, once proud to build each unit with precision, now felt like cogs in a machine they no longer believed in. "We're building ghosts," one machinist said. "These bikes aren't going to riders, they're going to parking lots." The motivation was gone, so was the trust. Internal memos revealed that plant-wide morale had dropped by over 40% in the last 2 quarters. Several departments had failed to meet production quality thresholds for the first time in over a decade. The metrics were clear. Employees were still showing up, but the purpose had left the building. The situation became worse when workers learned about Harley's external moves. Whispers circulated that Milwaukee was shifting major production lines to Southeast Asia. New hires were being brought in under temporary contracts with reduced benefits and no long-term guarantees. For the full-time workforce, it was a quiet confirmation of what they had feared: they were being phased out. Yet, management continued to operate in lockdown mode. No open meetings, no Q&A sessions, just laminated cards with new efficiency goals and silent HR visits. Those who asked questions were told to focus on the build. Those who pushed harder were reassigned. And yet, headquarters was already planning a bigger move. From Milwaukee to Manila, Harley's escape plan. Harley didn't collapse, it moved. While headlines focused on promotions, influencers, and showroom drama, a very different story was unfolding inside shipping manifests, customs filings, and lease agreements. Harley-Davidson had begun transferring key operations to the Philippines, Thailand, and Indonesia. The evidence wasn't theoretical, it was logistical. A supply chain analyst working for a private equity group evaluating Harley's long-term viability flagged multiple red flags within 6 weeks. Harley had signed export agreements with new component manufacturers based in Bangkok. A 37,000 square foot logistics center was quietly open near Manila. Even paint and plating contracts were being redirected to overseas partners. The move wasn't just about cost savings, it was about control. Overseas labor was significantly cheaper, regulations were more flexible, and critically, there were fewer union protections. Harley could build faster with less oversight and no press leaks. The math was brutal, but efficient. This wasn't Harley's first international move. The company had flirted with global production before, especially in India and Brazil, but this time was different. It wasn't supplemental, it was strategic displacement. Documents obtained through trade records showed a sharp year-over-year decline in component orders sent to U.S. plants paired with a simultaneous spike in air freight activity routed through Southeast Asia. In Milwaukee, a small team of project managers was quietly reassigned to EV transformation roles. Their actual job: coordination with a regional firm in Jakarta responsible for final stage motorcycle assembly. The bikes that once rolled off American lines were now being boxed and shipped to distribution centers halfway across the globe. And with that, American-made was no longer part of the plan. The riders who became data. He didn't buy the bike bought him. That's what it felt like the moment Tyler, a 24-year-old rider from San Diego, realized his free Harley wasn't just a sweet deal, it was a digital leash. The bike was delivered to his driveway with a bow and a contract. 30 pages, full of sleek branding and ambassador guidelines. He skimmed it. Everyone did. He posted his required selfie, tagged Harley-Davidson, even used their hashtag. Easy enough until he noticed the dashboard started syncing with his phone. Calendar events showed up on the bike's screen. His contacts too. Then his Spotify playlist shifted automatically when he drove through social zones marked by the Harley app. Everywhere Tyler went, the bike was listening. Not just recording rides, but analyzing routes, time of day, passenger frequency, his commute, his habits, even how aggressively he throttled the clutch. All captured. Paragraph 17, buried deep in the contract, granted Harley full rights to aggregate and behaviorally optimize user telemetry. It sounded harmless, until the prompts started showing up. Post a photo at the next pit stop. Share your ride story today. If he didn't comply, the notifications got louder. If he paused them, a support ticket was opened in his name. This wasn't a promotion, it was performance-based ownership. He was no longer just a rider, he was a marketing endpoint. And that was before he read paragraph 17. But if tracking your movements wasn't bad enough, what came next hit where most riders never saw it coming. Their wallet. The IRS doesn't care if it was free, it was a gift, until the government called it income. Sarah Williams, a 32-year-old single mother from Nashville, thought she'd won the opportunity of a lifetime. A free Harley Softail Deluxe, handed to her through the Harley Homegrown program as part of a social marketing initiative. The dealership treated her like royalty. The press photos ran online. She was proud, until tax season came. Her accountant stared at the Form 1099 MISC, confused. "This says you received $32,000 in non-cash compensation," he said. "That's going to count as income." Sarah's jaw dropped. That bike, her proudest moment, had just bumped her into a higher tax bracket. Her federal tax bill jumped by $7,800. In Tennessee, with no state income tax, she thought she was lucky. Riders in states like California or New York were getting hit even harder. Some owed over $10,000 for the free motorcycle. The worst part? She couldn't sell the bike to pay the bill. Harley's agreement locked her out of selling, trading, or transferring ownership for 36 months. The fine print was ironclad. Many riders assumed Harley would handle the tax paperwork. Some thought it fell under promotional exemption, but the Internal Revenue Service didn't see a promotion. They saw income. The showroom gave her the keys, but the government gave her a penalty. Worse, Sarah now owed interest after not filing the correct amount in advance. A few riders tried to return the bikes. That didn't erase the liability either. The IRS doesn't care if it runs or not. But the reason Harley could go this far had nothing to do with motorcycles. It had everything to do with what came next. Welcome to the Data Harvest Highway. They weren't building motorcycles anymore. They were building behavioral models. That's how Marcus Dunn, a former data integration engineer at a Harley-Davidson affiliate partner, described it. He had worked on the Rider Analytics Suite, the internal name for a project that transformed every giveaway bike into a roving behavioral scanner. These machines weren't just recording throttle pressure or engine load, they were capturing where riders stopped, how long they stayed, which businesses they visited, and how often they took detours. The tech was buried in the telemetry chipsets and paired with phone apps to create seamless biometric profiles. The engagement data didn't stay internal. Harley entered third-party agreements with insurers, advertisers, and behavioral researchers. The data was valuable because it wasn't just movement, it was motivation. If a rider stopped at a bar twice a week or consistently rode alone on Sunday mornings, that became a sellable pattern. What began as a motorcycle giveaway had become a full-scale data acquisition campaign. Harley even tracked emotional tone in voice recordings captured through helmet-integrated microphones, ostensibly for safety, but actually parsed for brand sentiment. Marcus finally resigned after seeing data packets shared with companies far outside the motorcycle world, fitness brands, dating platforms, retail analytics firms. Riders had no idea they were test subjects in a real-time behavioral economy. The bikes were no longer transportation. They were surveillance units with exhaust pipes. And the worst part? The riders had agreed to all of it. Every line, every clause, every click to accept. And what they learned about you? They're already selling it. Japan, Germany, and China are watching closely. The moment Harley-Davidson broke ranks and started giving away motorcycles, competitors around the world began running simulations. In Japan, Kawasaki convened a high-level crisis meeting within 24 hours. Internal memos revealed fears of a Harley contagion, a scenario in which American pricing expectations collapse, forcing Japanese brands to subsidize their own premium lines just to stay in the conversation. Kawasaki's retro-themed bikes and performance cruisers have long filled the price gap left by Harley's premium positioning. Now that entire strategy is under threat. Germany's response was no less serious. At BMW's Motorrad headquarters in Berlin, executives expressed concerns over consumer backlash. For years, BMW positioned its bikes as precision machines, more refined than Harley, but also more expensive. If the market redefines value around giveaways and zero-payment plans, brands like BMW may find themselves trapped in a losing battle over perceived worth. But the most aggressive move came from China. Brands like CF Moto and QJ Motor, once considered niche exporters, immediately launched regional dealer initiatives across the southern United States. Their goal was simple: flood the low-end market while Harley flounders. Chinese manufacturers are not looking to match Harley's desperation. They are looking to replace it. The early data shows they're succeeding. Dealerships in Florida, Georgia, and Texas report a surge in test rides for Chinese cruisers under $7,000. That's less than 1/4 the sticker price of Harley's core models. While Harley bleeds, others are positioning to dominate the space it once owned. But the pressure didn't stop there. Washington just got involved. Capitol Hill wants answers. Within weeks of the giveaway program's viral breakout, several members of Congress initiated inquiries into whether Harley-Davidson violated federal franchise protections. At the heart of the issue is whether Harley's direct-to-consumer vehicle placement bypassed legally protected dealership agreements. For decades, those agreements shielded dealers from competition by their own manufacturer. Now, those legal walls appear to have been bulldozed in the name of rapid inventory liquidation. A bipartisan letter sent to the Federal Trade Commission, co-signed by senators from Wisconsin, Texas, and Pennsylvania, questioned whether Harley's program constituted manufacturer sabotage. Behind closed doors, staffers refer to the brand's behavior as reckless and precedent-breaking. Regulators fear that if Harley escapes scrutiny, every automaker might follow, unraveling the franchise model altogether. At a hastily convened hearing of the Subcommittee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship, a Harley dealer from Ohio testified, "We've invested over $4 million into our local showroom. Harley's new program wiped out our customer pipeline overnight." Lawmakers listened intently. Some appeared shocked. Others seemed already convinced that fines or even forced rollbacks could be on the table. Legal experts have drawn comparisons to the automaker wars of the late 20th century, when similar accusations of channel stuffing and predatory pricing made headlines. The difference now is that Harley isn't merely changing prices, it's changing ownership definitions, marketing roles, and legal responsibilities. But on the factory floor, something even bigger was erupting: the strike. Harley thought would never happen. At Harley-Davidson's York, Pennsylvania assembly plant, dozens of workers walked off the line just after lunch. They didn't wave banners. They didn't chant. They simply dropped their tools and walked out. By the end of the week, it was no longer just one plant. Facilities in Wisconsin, Missouri, and Kansas were experiencing coordinated slowdowns, covert sickouts, and full-blown strike votes. The issue wasn't just about job security, it was about betrayal. Factory workers had been promised transition plans, retraining programs, and investment in future-ready facilities. What they got instead were outsourcing memos, severance rumors, and vague commitments to long-term adaptability. The shift to overseas production had accelerated behind the scenes. Now it was hitting home, and hard. Union leaders accused Harley of gutting its American labor base while pretending to innovate. Internal forecasts suggested that more than 60% of Harley's U.S. workforce would be eliminated within 2 years. Entire departments were being phased out, replaced by third-party contractors or automated systems run from Thailand. One veteran welder summed it up during a town hall meeting: "They're not automating to improve. They're automating to eliminate us." Feeling the shockwave from Harley's collapse yet? We're diving even deeper into what's really going on behind the scenes. Hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more updates on how this disaster is shaking up the industry. The union is preparing for what could become the largest industrial action Harley has ever faced, and with brand loyalty collapsing, rider sentiment tanking, and Washington watching closely, Harley's leadership knows this isn't just a protest, it's a reckoning. And then the final number hit Wall Street: the death of Harley's American empire. The final collapse didn't come with fireworks. It came with a quarterly earnings call that investors had been dreading. Harley-Davidson reported a staggering 39% drop in North American sales year over year, its worst performance since the Great Recession. Share value plunged in real time. Analysts stopped asking questions. They started cutting ties. What followed was swift. Two of Harley's largest dealership groups filed for bankruptcy protection. The motor company laid off another 1,500 workers. And then came the announcement that stunned everyone. Effective within 12 months, Harley would cease all combustion-based motorcycle manufacturing in the continental United States. Production would be consolidated at plants in Thailand and India. The final blow wasn't economic, it was symbolic. The factory floor in Milwaukee, the spiritual heart of the Harley brand, would be repurposed for global logistics and software design. The sound of engines would be replaced with the click of keyboards. Harley's soul wasn't just lost, it was sold. Riders who once saw their bikes as freedom now saw them as surveillance tools. Dealers who once hosted Saturday ride-ins now boarded up their shops. Union workers who spent decades building American steel now faced an outsourced future they couldn't recognize. And the era that began in Milwaukee, it ends right here. From giveaways to strikes, Harley's future is now uncertain, and you've seen it unfold here first. If you want to stay ahead of the curve, hit like, subscribe, and join the conversation in the comments. This story is far from over, and we'll keep you updated every step of the way. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.